I'm just gonna wait for everybody to get on. Hi Jessica, how are you? Just gonna wave. Waiting for everybody to get on. Hello everybody. Hope everybody's Friday is going well. Just gonna give it 5 minutes, let some people get on. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Luckily, I was able to get I was able to get a haircut. Um,
Yo,
what's going on? How are you?
chilling, man. What's going on with you?
I'm feeling good. It's Friday. It's been a long week, so Friday's always good. How about
Yeah,
yourself?
man. Yeah, man. I'm good. I'm just getting through a busy work week.
Yeah,
Lots
yeah,
going on in the world.
yeah.
Um, so I just want to kind of, first of all, for people who are joining, kind of talk about what this is all about.
Yeah.
Pencil is a nonprofit that, obviously, if you're on Pencil's page, you know about Pencil. But for those of you who are joining, that are just joining on my live, Pencil is a nonprofit, New York based, that focuses on connecting public school students to the business world, and with the ultimate mission of opening eyes, opening minds, and opening doors for
Right,
not just the public school students, especially when we're talking about opening minds. It's opening everybody's minds, right?
right,
And
right.
I think you know we're in a moment right now in the history of this country, really in the history of the world, where you're seeing a great awakening of minds.
Right,
And
right.
it's so important for us to kind of seize on that moment and have conversations that propel that awakening. Um, and it's interesting, that today happens to be Juneteenth, and we wanted to
Right.
commemorate that as well. One black man talking to
I'm
another
not
black
sure.
man, young brother.
Yes, sir.
You know what I
Yes,
mean?
sir.
Because Juneteenth has significance in the history of this country, right? And certainly in the history of the black community, right?
Definitely.
Where, for those of you who don't know, it's so funny because I got a text this morning from really one of my best friends in the world. It's a white brother I went to law school with. Shout out to Joe. I love him. And liberal dude, not a, he's just like one of the most principled people I've ever met. And he sent me a text, Happy Juneteenth. Crazy, he said, crazy, I'm just finding out about this, in my late 30s,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
crazy, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
you know, and kind of, so again, for those of you who don't know what Juneteenth is, it's the, the date in which, we commemorate and reflect on, the official end of slavery, right?
Right,
And you would think that's the Emancipation Proclamation, but actually,
right.
the official end of slavery really came 2 years after that,
Yeah,
because in Texas, which was the most remote of the slave states, it took 2 years for the Union, army to have the strong enough presence to be
right.
able to enforce the end of slavery. So that's what Juneteenth is about. But for me, it's like it's a time of reflection, right? So on at the same time that we we celebrate, it's funny, right? Because I was talking to um, a colleague of mine, and she said to me, she said, how it's crazy that like every black holiday or black you know day of reflection comes
Right.
with it some level of sadness, some level
Mm,
of heaviness, right? Like Martin Luther King Day, it's like, yeah, you celebrate the life of Martin Luther King, but you also remember
but,
that he
hmm,
was assassinated, right?
yeah, yeah.
And even on this Juneteenth, where we're talking about the end of slavery, I'm not celebrating the end of slavery as such. I'm really celebrating black excellence
Mm,
and black
mm.
perseverance,
Yeah.
because even with the end of slavery, if you understand it as an economic system where,
Yeah.
you know, um, the second slavery was declared illegal or even made illegal, there were people, you know, who were economically, you know, affected by it, that
Yeah.
they got their wheels started turning and try to figure out how you keep structures in place to maintain power and the economics of slavery. So, you know, it's a time of deep reflection, and I'm happy for you to for me to have this conversation with you. You know, when did
Definitely.
we meet, Stephan? Did we meet at the gala that I spoke at? Was that the first time?
No, I actually, the first time we met was at it was the end of the summer pencil celebration of the interns. That was hosted at Paul Hastings.
Got it, got it. Yo,
Yeah,
so yeah, so I just
yeah.
remember, I remember you, man, like working the room. You know, you just smile. You know,
Thank you.
confidence, firm handshake. You know, whether it was whoever it was, and you were just like, it impressed me because
Thank you.
I reflect on, you know, when I was your age, your vintage, I didn't have the self confidence, I didn't have the wherewithal to work a room the way that you did. You
Thank
know,
you.
and there's all sorts of of reasons for that. But you know, again, so I think we have a few people in the room now, some of whom may know who you are, some of whom don't. But maybe talk a little bit about yourself. You know, your background, where you're from, what you're up to nowadays, and how you've been holding down. You know,
Yeah.
you yourself and your family during the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to, I just want to comment on, something that you mentioned as far as seizing the moment,
Mm,
um, as ever so important. Like, right now, I think this is a time where, if you're not making a decision of what to do in the moment, you're going to get left behind. And I
mm.
think a lot of people are realizing that, which is why, there's a lot of activity around, making the decision of which side am I going to be on? And I think what's so important about that is that there's no, for once, there's no in between, right? And you, I mean, you said it, right? And I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, no, definitely. Right now is, more than ever, it's so important to seize the moment. So I appreciate you saying that. As far as what I've been working on, so I just finished up my sophomore year, right?
Well, where you
Finished
from?
school.
Tell me where you
So
from. Do you know?
I'm
Tell the
I'm
people.
I'm from Canarsie, Brooklyn, right?
Okay.
Born to Haitian parents, right? Born to Haitian parents, but although I'm from Canarsie, I go to school at Lehman, which is in the Bronx. And
Right.
people kind of like, always ask me like, why would you travel that far? Why would you travel that far? But when I stepped on Lehman's campus, I fell in love with it immediately. I'm biased, right? Because I think that Lehman is the only CUNY campus that has an actual physical campus where you feel like you're at, an environment that induces just like that whole college experience, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
Lehman, they as soon as they said, all right, here, this is where you sign, I was just like, okay, let's get it,
Yeah. And you're
let's get
and
it
you're a
going.
junior now, right?
Yeah, I'm a rising junior. So yeah, I just
Right.
finished my sophomore year, rising junior, which is exciting because I'm moving closer to getting ready for the LSAT, right? Which I know you're so familiar with, right?
Yeah, well, I know a little bit about the LSAT. Yeah.
you
So
know
the LSAT is basically the SAT for getting into law school.
exactly,
So that's the long term plan, to be a lawyer. At least
right?
in the first instance, you're gonna be a lawyer, huh? That's dope.
Yeah, well, that's what we're going for. Yeah, yeah,
So so it's crazy. Like that's why pencil is so dope, because you and I would not have been connected
right,
were it not for pencil.
right.
And you're going to law school. I can right now offer you.
Yeah.
I got the code. I cracked the code to the LSAT, man.
Now
Like,
you gotta give
listen,
the code. You gotta give the
you
code.
don't got to be super smart. I went from like testing at an 80% level, and then
Yeah.
ultimately getting like whatever, like 98 whatever percent.
So what's the code? What's the
Nah,
code?
I got you,
You
man.
gotta give the
We'll take
code.
that off the live. I got you. But but it's crazy. But that's the value of of connecting like this, right? Through
Right.
organizations like Pencil, because I wouldn't have been able to even meet you
Well,
and offer you that kind of mentorship. So
well, well,
definitely how.
well,
And by the way, just before you go, funny enough, I prepared for my LSAT
Right.
at Lehman.
Right.
At Lehman, I basically broke into the school because I wanted to practice under testing conditions. I didn't
Yeah.
like studying like by reading. I studied by taking the test.
Yeah.
So I would sit down. I would like sneak into the school. I was not registered or anything like that. I'd sneak into the classroom, sit down with a timer, and I think you get 25 or maybe like you get 30 minutes or whatever for each section.
Yeah.
It's like, and I would like give myself like 27 minutes, and I would just crank through exams and just like, you know, take a break, whatever. But it's funny that you're leaving. So yeah. So
Well,
yeah,
did anybody bother you, or like anybody was like, look, you don't
nah,
look
I mean, it was like, you know, it was like summertime. So, you know, I would just find an empty classroom. I mean, every now and then, like somebody poked their head in, and
right.
you know, people just assume that you belong there. So
To that point though, what I
yeah.
really want to highlight in that moment though is the motivation, right? I mean, just the motivation to get to a place where you know it's going to take you to the next level.
Yeah.
But in order to get that motivation, like talk a little bit about, you know, your story, where you come from, you know, like what is the background to that motivation? What fueled you to say like by any means necessary, so to speak? You know what I mean? Like talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I grew up in the Bronx, man. I was, you know, was born in Trinidad, came over when I was a baby. It's single parent, you know, 2 jobs. She put herself through school, all that, public school. And look, I mean, the reality is that, you know, there was really no difference between me and the friends I grew up with. I mean, frankly, to this day, some of the most capable, smart, resourceful people that I've ever met, you know, from, you know, growing up in the Bronx. And I just really, I happen to get lucky, man. You know, one of my best friends to this day, Roy Adams, he was a good student. He happened to be a good student. I happened to see his report card one day by accident, and I saw he had like a 96 average. And like for me, just being naturally competitive, I was like, I could do that. So I ended up like, you know, doing very well grades wise, but I was still cutting class and screwing around. But I just showed up for the test, and he helped me prepare. And I would hand him the homework and all that, you know, I'd copy it or whatever. It's like not good. I'm not advocating for that. I'm just telling you my story.
Right.
And so, you know, he went to Andover for a summer program, and they taught him, you know, how to apply for college and what colleges you should apply for. And he came back, you know, to his group of friends, which included me, and said, hey guys, yo, you wouldn't believe it. We got the grades and the SAT scores to get into Ivy League schools. And it was just information we didn't have because we had college counselors at my high school. I loved it with Clinton High School, but you know, and that's my you know, that's my home. But at the time, the college counselor just kind of told everybody the same thing: apply to SUNY schools because, you know, A, I know you're poor, so you ain't gonna be able to afford it. And B, you know, I'm not even looking at the transcript. It's just like, just apply to SUNY schools. But Roy came with this information. And Andover, MS Squared was the name of the program. It was a math and science for minority students. And they told their students, go back home and share this information that you got here with everybody else. So I happened to just get that information. I applied to like all the Ivy League schools and all that stuff. And like, I got into every one except for Harvard. No shade. But so I ended up going to Yale. So I ended up going to Yale, and that was a big deal, obviously. And you know, from Yale, I did a few things, whatever, and then ended up going to law school. And you know, right now I'm a partner at Paul Hastings, which is a global law firm, and it's a
wait.
I'm skipping parts of the story.
Can we sell it? Wait, this means a lot to me. And
yeah,
it's because, and I want to, you know, I really want to get more into your story, but the reason why it means a lot to me is because I look at you and it feels all the more possible. You know, you have to understand that, like, you know, I mean, you know this, I'm pretty sure well, that the type of environments that we come from, sometimes, or in most cases, some people don't even finish college degrees, right? Like, if I was to be transparent, if I was to be transparent about the neighborhood that I grew up in, and the people that like and I love them dearly because these are the people that have made me in a sense, right?
Yeah.
But not all of them are in a parallel, right? Not all of them, you know what I mean, are aiming, or not to say aiming, but not all of them had the information, right? Not all of them had the opportunity, right? But for those that did have the opportunity, and for those that do or did have the information, like people like you that took that information and ran to become an inspiration, for somebody like me, that means more than I can say because I know it's possible. I know
Yeah.
that when the next room that I walk in, where people look at me as if I'm not supposed to be there, they can't tell me that I can't be there because I know you did it.
My man.
I know
Yeah.
you did it. So because
That-
you did it, right, that means that you left a path behind, right? Like you said, look, this is the game plan, right? Information is key. Get the
yeah.
information, leverage the information, and there's nothing that you cannot do,
Yeah.
right, with that information. So I really want to give you your flowers while you're here and tell you thank you so much for taking that opportunity, taking that information and running with it. Because the reality of the matter is that other people had the information and did nothing with it.
Mm.
Other people had the
Yeah.
information and they just didn't probably see the 40-year game, right?
Yeah.
Or the 30-year game. But
Yeah.
we need more people like you.
Man, you really preaching right now, man. Like it's funny because I've always framed it as me kind of getting lucky. I happen to get some information from my boy, which turned my life around. But you're right, right? It takes an act of actually seizing the information and doing something with it. So yeah, man, and it also puts upon your shoulders the responsibility of paying it forward and making sure that, if I can help you ace that LSAT, I got you. You know? Yeah,
Thank you. Paying
yeah,
it forward, paying it forward.
absolutely, man. With that, thank you for that, man. So let me ask you a little bit about yourself, man, because I really want to know about like what gives you the confidence to move the way you move, man, in the circles that we're in. Because I mean, I'll tell you this, you know, growing up in the Bronx, going to Manhattan was like a foreign country to us. Like
Mm,
we didn't go to Manhattan like for
mm.
dinner, right? We didn't go for sushi, right? Like a special occasion dinner for us was if you graduated from junior high school, we went to Red Lobster. You know what I mean? Or went to
Yeah.
Sizzler. You
No,
know what I'm saying?
this is so some
Yeah.
people on some
Feel me?
people on
People
this
don't
some
get it.
people
People don't know.
they might,
Yeah.
all right.
And that's why like one of my favorite things to do with Pencil and like our partnerships is to give a tour of the office because like
Right,
I want them to come to my office in corporate America because for me going
right,
to a corporate office I had no access to that. That was like going to
right,
Timbuktu. You know
right,
what I
right,
mean?
right,
And
right, right,
so
right.
I want to pull the curtain back and show them, yo, check this out. This you should feel comfortable here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because and it's interesting to watch the metamorphosis of the kids that go to my office, take a tour, and initially they're like uncomfortable because they never
Yeah.
seen anything like
Yeah.
this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just see it on TV, and then by the end of the day, they feel like they own it. You know what I mean? They're like,
Yeah.
yo, pass me a Sprite. Give me another slice of pizza. Because it's one thing to you know to see something in two dimensions and somebody to come to to come to the hood and tell you, you can be this and you can do that and you can be all these, whatever, you can be like Bill Cosby, but that's not tangible. When you see
Right.
it in 3D, it becomes tangible, you know, and
So
just something simple like that can open a million possibilities for somebody. That's why it's one of my favorite things to do.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
To that point though, I mean, I had a similar experience, and that experience for me changed everything. So I grew up in Canarsie, Brooklyn, right? But quite frankly, I never went to school in my neighborhood.
Mm,
So the root of it all is that my mother is a strong believer in education,
yeah.
a strong believer in the environment that your education is going to automatically bring for you, right? So she always thought of it as, look, while we love where we live,
Yeah.
it the vision I have for you, it's not gonna manifest there. And I didn't understand it. I'll be honest with you. Like I was traveling for school, ever since I could remember, but I didn't understand why I was getting sent to these other neighborhoods where these kids had parents that owned houses, that owned real estate. You know what I mean? Were lawyers, were doctors, were professionals. I didn't
Yeah.
understand why I was being put in an environment where I didn't really have too much in common. I can remember even in elementary school, because of the schools that I was fortunate to go to, that there were like these little microaggressions towards me because I
Mm.
was obviously different, right?
Yeah.
So that was always something that like put me in the mind frame of, okay, well, your environment is deeply correlated to where exactly you will go in life, whether you like it or not, right?
Yeah.
Fast forward, I'm in high school now, and I have during my school year, I worked and I went to school, and I was a counselor, right, at an after school program, right. So at this after school program, the school in particular was in Far Rockaway. So if you're not, for the people that aren't familiar with the peninsula, Far Rockaway is a clear divide, right? There's one type of people on one side, and there's another on the other side.
The
The
proverbial
school,
train tracks.
right,
Yeah.
right, right, and it's literally to the point where if you just take a 40-minute drive to drive through the peninsula, you will see it. So the school that I was working at was on that particular side, right? And it was just that these kids, they're very smart, but they hadn't been exposed to much, right? Fast forward again. I was fortunate to work at Bloomberg during the summer year of between high school and my first year in college.
Hmm.
And one of the advantages, right, to working at Bloomberg is you can bring people on a tour of the building. Now, the building that I was working at was 731 Lexington. And if you've ever been to that building, it's amazing. The architecture from the outside to even the inside is just like it's breathtaking, especially if you're going there for the first time. So as I'm, thinking about my experience as a counselor during the school year, here I am at Bloomberg with an opportunity to bring these kids to the office. So me, right, just being the intern, taking advantage of what I have, especially because, I treat these situations as if like, maybe I might never get this opportunity again,
Right.
right? Not to say that it's going to be the reality, but let's just assume that, that's what's going to happen. I said to myself, okay, if I can get these kids, right, a group of kids into this building, maybe that will, spark a plug, right? Maybe that will like give a kid an opportunity to see something outside of the peninsula. And it was crazy because once the kids got on, they finally, we organized everything. I spoke to my manager, very supportful. And then, I spoke to the counselor, the senior counselor at the school at the time. We worked everything out. We got a group of, I believe, 15 students to get on, to get to 731 Lights. So now they're taking a tour, and like I'm really just trying to like lay back and just hear what like the reactions are, because I just want to see what they're saying about just this opportunity to get to a place where I found it just so breathtaking, right? A place that I wanted to go to every day just to work, right?
Right.
And I'm hearing some of the comments, and some of these kids, like, they've never been to the city. They've never been into a corporate space. Some of the kids don't have any family members, you know what I mean, that have had the opportunity to work in corporate America at that level. Some of these kids are so far removed from
Yeah.
the door, from the doors, right?
Yeah.
From the doors of Bloomberg, right? Or just these corporate spaces, you know, physically and metaphorically. This is so far removed,
Yeah.
right? And it's that moment that you walk through the floor where your self-esteem suddenly rises up, which I
Yeah.
was like hearing from the conversations, because I heard that, like, during after the tour, we had did a presentation. So I got a couple other interns, and I did like a mini panel, and I did a mini presentation of like Bloomberg, what I do, what they do, and just talking about their experience. So after, you know, the presentation, I asked, you know, like some of the people, you know, what's going on, like some of the kids, like what's going on in your minds, like, you know, has anything inspired you? Has anything changed how you see, you know, where you see yourself? And majority of the kids in that room said that now I see myself here.
Yo,
And
that's
and for
amazing.
and for me, you know, like for me
Right.
that was really what that internship was about, right? I
Wow.
felt in that moment that God used me, right,
Right.
to
Talk about it.
position these children to
Yeah.
see something beyond their environment, to stimulate, right, that motivation to get to somewhere, you know, that they never imagined that they would be. You know,
Yeah.
similar to what people like you do for me, right?
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? And that's what that moment felt like. And you know, just to answer the question like about what my motivation like where my motivation lies, it's that I know that if I do it, Stephan from Converse, Brooklyn, that went to Legman College, does it and makes it to partner. I mean, at that point, the path is laid.
Right.
You know
Yo, so
that.
yo, so first of all, let me just give huge kudos to your mom for
Thank
forcing
you.
you to go
Definitely.
to school and the environment that you went to school in, because I tell you, I was asking the question earlier, like what gave you the confidence and what made you, you know, so secure to be able to work the room the way you worked it in my offices. God, it just really stuck out to me how
Yeah.
like sociable you were, how confident you were.
Thank you.
And at your age, I would
Thank you.
never have been that confident. And it's a clear result of the fact that you went to school in the you basically went, you know, you went to school in a situation that trained you for that, you know.
Thank
And
you.
it's so different than my experience growing up, because I went from straight, you know, from the Bronx, like knucklehead, you
Talk
know,
about it. Talk about
Tupac,
it.
razor
Talk.
blades in the mouth, like crazy, to Yale.
Right.
And it was like such a massive culture shock for me, just a massive culture shock for me.
Yeah.
I'd never been in a context where there were more white people than black people, other than in places where I didn't belong, like
Right.
Banks and
Right.
Manhattan. And
Right.
so
Right.
like where I knew it was just like, you know, and so being around that, I gotta tell you, to the point where like when people would say hi to me,
Yeah. Talk
I'd be
about it.
like, yo, are you talking to me?
Talk
You know,
about it.
because you're like,
Talk
you know,
about it.
growing up, you really on alert, because you in order you got
That's
to become a wolf on some level,
right.
right? And
Right.
you have to
Right.
be careful. And so I was it just took just a while for me to assimilate. But it's interesting how I went in kind of like you know, the extreme opposite direction, because if you've never been to the Yale campus, it's dead smack in New Haven, which is a very underserved, impoverished, you know, city, um, with you know, a large minority population. So the only
Yeah.
thing that separates the Yale campus from New Haven is like these 10 feet, you
Right.
know, wrought
Right.
iron gates that you need your Yale ID to get in.
Yeah.
And so if you've never felt, you know, the weight of your race before, try being a Yale student trying to get into those
Right.
gates,
Right.
and being a black Yale student trying to get into those gates without your ID. You know what I mean? You learn real quick that they're like, you don't belong here. You know, it's kind of like,
Especially the
remember that
prominent
video? Yeah, I
times.
don't know
Yeah.
if you saw that recent video of like that lady that was, you know, trying to, you know, tell this guy not to stencil Black Lives Matter in front of his house, and she was just assuming
Right.
that because he was black that he didn't live there. You know what I mean? And so yeah, but go ahead, you about to say something?
No, I was actually gonna just like, you know, mention that especially I think everything is context. So
Yeah,
thinking about just like the time, right?
yeah,
During the time that you were at, you know what I mean? Think about like just even
yeah,
those barriers of just the time being there, right?
yeah,
Think like even considering now, I mean, even considering your points, your friend's point about just how finding out about Juneteenth now, it
yeah,
highlights this, the circulation of it. It highlights just how fast information is traveling and where
yeah.
it's reaching.
And
So think of it.
it
Yeah,
also highlights how much Black history has been suppressed in this
right,
nation's
right.
school system, right? Like
Information.
you know, it's really interesting. Like even if you look in the textbooks, they don't even the Tulsa massacres. They frame it as the
Mm,
Tulsa riots, the race
mm,
riots. Like, what are you talking
mm.
about? Race riots? They were massacred,
Right, right,
beat
right,
up, and by
right,
to my you know my white brothers and sisters who are out there shouting and screaming on our behalf. Thank you so much. And
right,
if you're
right,
asking how you can, you know, help us commemorate, you know, Juneteenth, my answer is, you know, pick up a book and read some American history, you
right.
know, and I don't say Black history. I'm saying American history,
Wow.
because you've been miseducated as to the Black experience. You know what I mean? So, and the Tulsa massacres had happened, like, you know, what, 99 years ago?
99 years ago. Yeah,
99
99
years
years ago.
ago.
Yeah,
So, you
yeah.
know, people, you know, it's interesting. So to that point, some people look at me and they'll look at you. They're like, well, you know, you're proof that, you know, you can make it. You know, the
Right.
promise of America is available to all. But you and I know that we were just maybe a fraction away from being something else or someone else. I always say that, like, I was like, you know, for me it was Yale or jail. Like, I
Mm.
was I was, you know, on a path that could have led anywhere. And frankly, you know, I'm from a family where, like, you know, half my brothers, you know, served time, you know, or incarcerated, you know, because
Right.
they were freaking brilliant, and they learned very earlier than I did, because I'm the dumbest of the bunch, that you know I can make millions of dollars doing this, you know. And, you know, it led to a downfall. Ultimately, everyone landed on their feet and everyone's doing great. But, like, it needs to be understood that just as you see a Gerd Alexander who made it and got lucky, you know, there are 20 other Gerd Alexanders, same potential, if not better, that fell victim to circumstances, you know, of their environment. And,
Yeah.
you know, to look at me as the person that justifies, or, you know, any other successful Black person as the person that justifies why, there's no problem. It's fine. You know, it's missing the mark and missing the point, because there should be 20 others. There should be 40 others. There should be, 5 million others, but they're
Right.
not, because they're sitting in jail or they're dead, So, just to that point, I wanted to,
Mm.
make sure that I drove that point home, and going back to the, the Yale thing, because I wanted to ask you, um, because I made the point about feeling conscious about your race in the context of being a Black Yale student trying to get into those gates. I tell you, I
Right.
learned really quickly. By the way, that's when I learned how to put the little bit of this in my twang. You know what I mean? And not talk like I'm from the
That
Bronx. Like,
education.
you got to
Right.
send me signals, right? It's funny, because I just drove across the country in an RV with my wife, my two girls, Jet and Bo, and my in-laws, who I love dearly. And
Yeah.
we got in this RV, and we were gonna head to California to my brother and sister-in-law's house,
Yeah.
and hunker down for the pandemic. And I was like joking, but I wasn't joking. I dug out all my Duke Law hats, my Yale hats. I got my Yale hat right here. This is my Yale hat. I
Listen.
had it on, and I had it on the entire trip. You know what I mean? Because I learned quite early that if you don't have a way to interrupt these implicit
Mm.
biases,
Right. Right.
you can very easily get lumped into somebody's fantasy stereotype about who they
Who you
think you
are.
are and
Right.
who
Who do
you
you think
should
you
be,
are?
rather
Yeah.
than who you are. You know what I mean? So, when if you have an interaction with somebody and you have a hoodie on, it might be different for that
Yeah.
person's experience if you have a Yale hat on. And so it's unfortunate that you we have to think about things
You have
like
to
that
go
when
through.
others
Yeah.
don't. When
Right.
others don't. But
Right.
let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever been so conscious of your race in a context? Talk about that a little bit.
I mean, like, I love I love my school, right? I'm fortunate, right, in many regards, in many aspects, to be where I am. But think about it. You know very well the politics of corporate America. When I'm walking into a space amongst even other students, right, and I'm a CUNY student versus, a student that's at Yale or another Ivy League,
Yeah.
and then wait, watch this, and then there's the staff that's running the event went to an Ivy League or a Yale there's obviously going to be a larger gap because more than likely the people, if they see students from their alma mater, there's going
Mhm.
to just be an easier conversation. So when I walk in the room and I don't have that advantage, I'm even more aware of how people look at me because these are the little things that shouldn't matter but do matter.
Right.
So there have been instances where I'll be in a space where I'm just trying to, like just meet people and, just try to talk about like, why I'm here and learn a little bit more about them.
Yeah.
And then, some people who just don't understand the backstory, who don't understand, just the environment, they won't really appreciate my story as a CUNY student
Right.
because I mean, sadly, right? It's just that there's so much politics, right? So when I'm already labeled as such, then I open my mouth and I start talking about whatever it is that could be appropriate at the time. So, say for instance, I read the Times that morning, and I know about like something that's going on in the world, or say for instance, I read a book, right, that they might have read. It's as if they look at me kind of so surprised that
Yeah.
I would even be onto this,
Yeah.
right? Or like you have the moments where like wow, like
Yeah.
you're
You're
really.
kind of like the level of expectation, you know,
And
there's
all I did,
you're surprised by I mean I'm just recently I went shopping and like I don't know what store. It might have been like what was it? Might have been like Neiman Marcus or whatever.
yeah,
And I was like shopping. I might have been shopping, for a birthday gift for my brother-in-law who's sitting here making me nervous. Um, and whatever. We like shopping. I was just talking to the guy, and like, versus, based on the conversation we had, he had a sense that like, oh, you don't fit the mold of what I think. And he just asked me, it's like, are you like a rapper
a
or
rapper or a
whatever?
basketball player.
And that's fine because I'm swagged out. You know what I'm saying? So like that's a compliment. But then I said no, and I'm a lawyer. And he's like, yeah, where at? It's like I'm a partner at Paul Hastings. He's like, no way, get out of here,
No,
no
he
way.
didn't. He didn't say that. He didn't
No,
say
he
that.
100% said that. 100% said that. But it's like, like you can be so blind to your stereotypes that you say it out loud. Like that's how deeply ingrained and privileged you are, to be able to not only have these stereotypes but feel like it's okay to verbalize them to me. I'm just
and
like,
and
yeah.
and joke about it because they think it's funny, but it's not.
Yeah, well, and by the way, and this is what this is about, right? Because we're in a moment where people, a lot of my white friends are asking, how can I help? How can I understand all that stuff? And this is part of it, right? Like we got to talk about our experience because, you know, dating back to the first time I faked a quote white accent to get into the gate at Yale, my entire career has been built in a trajectory of conforming and
Mm,
learning how to fit into the culture, which is fine to a
right.
certain extent. Because listen, not even our white brothers and sisters are exactly who they are in a professional setting, and they are when they're at home. But the level of which to which we have to go to make our white brothers and sisters comfortable around us.
Comfortable, right?
You know, it's just like, I'm the Gerd that smiles. I'm the Gerd that speaks like you know, because you don't speak like me. Even though in home you're saying all the rap lyrics, but like, you know, if I speak to you like that, then you associate me with
Right,
something that you should be afraid
right,
of. So I
right.
got to speak like you. All right, cool. So I'm speaking like you, and I'm doing all these things to make you comfortable, to the point where I am embracing my discomfort so much that I'm so muted around you.
So what do you think that has done, right? I mean, considering your trajectory, like considering your story, all of the different places that you've been, you know, the amount of success that, you know, you had the opportunity to have, what, but also considering the balance of having to conform, you know, in many steps of the way, what do you think that has done to your mental health?
Yeah, so I mean, that's interesting because um, one of my partners asked me, and it, you know, I had a good experience at my law firm. I had a charmed experience, I would say. And one of my partners asked me, so how much of who you are and your, you know, your capability as a professional and a person in general, you think is attributable to you growing up in the Bronx? And I
Mm,
said, probably 98.9%. You know, because what you learn growing up in the streets is how to assess a situation very, very quickly, because your life could depend on it.
yep.
And so,
Talk
you know,
about it.
whether it's, and you trust your gut, whether you're on the subway or you're on the subway, you're on the train, you know, and you just like, you get a vibe and you get off at the next stop, or you change, cars, or you
Cause,
find yourself in
right,
a
yeah,
room that you just like, yo, the vibe don't feel right here, and you leave and all of a sudden it gets shot up. Like, you learn very quickly how to assess situations. So that skill set is what I took with me throughout my entire career. Like, where am I? What's the risk assessment? But what I did find is that I went a little bit too far in the other direction. You know, I became too filtered. I became too, you know, um,
mm,
inclined to make others feel comfortable around me,
right.
and be less vocal. And it's interesting that this is actually my first Instagram live. I've never done anything like this until this George Floyd thing happened. And my sister-in-law, Adrian, who, you know, I love so much and I admire so much, and my brother-in-law, Israel, they just like, they they just went super ham on
Mm,
the whole situation
yeah,
on all of their platforms, and got very vocal. And it was just inspiring to me because, you know, I'd been always very measured and very kind of focused on making sure that, you know, and I justified my lack of being vocal by saying, you know, I need to be in these rooms. I need to, you know, make sure that I secure my daughter's and my family's well-being. But that's not enough. You know what I mean? People need to hear my experience. People need to know that Gerd is not the Gerd that, like, you know, that you see and you can smile and be like, oh, that's my black friend, or that's my black partner, and
mm,
that's why. But like, you don't know the burden I
yeah,
carry. You don't know that every time I open my mouth, every product that I, you know, every deliverable that I make, you know, every you know, every deal that I work on, I'm carrying the weight of representing an entire community, because I'm
right.
trying to break your stereotypes that are so deeply ingrained in your psyche, that any little slip up will allow you to justify why you feel the way you feel and talk the way you talk in your
Wow.
house, you know? So, you know, and 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 so in that evolution of becoming somebody that was in the room but didn't speak up in the room because they were more comfortable embracing their own discomfort than making you uncomfortable. I'm now in this place, and I've this awakening that's happening across this nation. I tell you, Stephan, it's not just an awakening for our white brothers and sisters who are out there screaming, shouting, filming with us outside and online. It's not just an awakening for them, although more so for them, but it's an awakening for me. It's an awakening for us. It's like, all right, you know, like, you know, all hands on deck.
Mm,
It's time, and now is the time, you know. And so, and what I've been saying is, you know, I want to give due honor and credit to, the white brothers and sisters that are out there, standing with us, fighting alongside with us, because, we've always known that we need you. We need you, and we need you to stick with us, because, we've been trying to do it on our own forever, and
Yep.
and it's not worked. And, you know, a lot of times you get into these conversations and it becomes like, this black versus white thing, and it's not. It's not. What I've been saying and what I firmly believe is that it's a justice versus injustice thing. And
Mm.
so, you either standing on the side of justice and you out there and you trying to do something, not just thoughts and prayers, although we need those too. We need some action.
We
You
need
know
some
what I'm
action.
saying? Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
100%. So, and if you're on the side of justice, then you're doing action, because it's not enough to not be racist. You know what I mean? You got to reckon with yourself, and you got to be anti-racist. So kudos to all my brothers and sisters out there, white, black, brown, yellow, indifferent, red, polka dot, everybody out there that's out there fighting, please stick with
Yeah.
us, because while you guys can turn off CNN and decide that I'm tired and, my feet are tired and I'm not going to march it anymore, or I'm not going to, push for these agendas anymore, we can't turn off the injustice the way you can turn off CNN. So stick with us. So anyway, I just wanted to say
Yeah.
that. I
Look,
went
I
off on a
mean,
tangent.
that's. I mean, it's powerful. It's necessary, right? Right now, this is the moment to say what you're saying more than
Yeah,
ever. And
100%.
I also wanted to, give a special shout out to, organizations such as Pencil for making it a priority just to not stand in the middle.
Yeah,
Because the reason why I want to mention that is because for students like me, and there are a lot of students like me, right? I think we need to highlight that as well. I'm not unique in any sense. I'm not, this special kid that was just born to lead, like this whole community. There are a lot of students like me that are looking at organizations that we are a part of to see what they're saying,
yeah,
because that's so important.
yeah,
And what I appreciate about that, especially a live like this, where both of us are being, like vulnerable about our stories, but also
yeah,
highlighting that, like, yes, we're proud of the things that we've been able to do, and the things that we're going to do. But at the same time, every single day, like, there's a struggle that we face, whether we like it or not.
yeah,
Now, imagine this, right? Imagine, you know, me, like, I've always went to these different schools, but I can honestly say I'm pretty sure I've had almost the same, aggressive experiences as, kids that I grew up with in my neighborhood, even
hmm,
though most of my time, as far as school goes, was not spent in my neighborhood.
right.
If that shows you that on any side of the spectrum that you're on, you're still going to face these aggressions, you're still going to face these experiences, that shows you whatever side of the bank you're on, you're not safe. And
Yo,
and and
I
I
mean,
mean,
there's no better example than the police brutality. I mean, that's the thing. It's just like you can literally do everything right and still end up dead, you know, and not getting, the same level of tolerance and leniency as somebody who doesn't look. You know why? Because empathy is a function of proximity, you know,
yeah,
and the reality is that, like, I will admit, my brother-in-law said this. He's like, I'll admit, and I agree with this, that I am more sensitive to the atrocities that occur on U.S. soil than I am to what's occurring, in China, for example, right? And because it's here, it's on our
yeah,
doorstep, and we feel it a little bit more when it's somebody that looks like you, and that's one of the reasons why it's always like really, it's been so difficult to get through to certain people, as to what Black Lives Matter means, and we're not kneeling to disrespect the flag. We're kneeling to draw
right.
attention to a major problem. We're actually here to help with
A
it,
reality,
right?
a reality, right?
Exactly. But what this George Floyd thing did in the midst of this pandemic, where people, although isolated and separated, are more close than ever. One of my my wife said, somebody said, man, I just can't wait to go to the mall so I can say hi to a stranger and tell them I missed you. You know, it's interesting that this pandemic has drawn people closer because now more than ever we feel the intense need for human interaction. You
Right.
know, we understand each other's humanity because we're vulnerable in that space. And so when this George Floyd thing happened, it was the perfect storm because it's just like people were able to see how disgusting that is, and how and actually feel it even more because of the intense sense of
Right.
isolation that they felt during this pandemic. So I think that's been unbelievably important. And look, you know, and that's why, like, you know, back to your statement about, you know, pencil and how valuable they are. Exactly. You got to pick a
Mm.
side. You got to pick a side. Thoughts and prayers ain't cutting it anymore, especially for your generation. I was talking to um,
What's
uh,
that?
one of my very very close, you know, mentors, who, you know, person is brilliant. I mean, I'm telling you, so utterly intelligent. And, you know, he and I had a little bit of an, you know, it's a little bit of a wedge that was driven in our relationship, you know, a few years ago when we kind of debated the Colin Kaepernick kneeling thing. And, you know, he was like, oh, disrespecting the flag and all that stuff. And I really did my best to try to explain like what it was all about. And here's this person who was like, you know, as non-diverse as it comes, but not a racist, you know, but he's just so privileged that he was allowed to be, he's like blinded to the plight of, 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 of black people in this country. And he didn't see it. And, you know, and it turned into an argument and it was problematic for us. But we, you know, our relationship was strong. So we kind of just recently with the meme, I think everybody's seen it, with a little black girl. And he said, this reminded me of your daughter. And I think this was brilliantly said. And what the meme said was, we said Black Lives Matter. We never said Black Lives Matter more. We know
Right.
all lives matter. And we just need your help, for Black lives are in danger. And he said, I thought that was so
Yeah.
brilliantly said. And then he called me and we started talking. And he said, you know, because I really, you know, I was always offended by the Black Lives Matter thing, because to me it meant that, you know, just, you know, that white lives didn't matter as much. And I was like, dude, how
Yeah.
could you even remotely make this about you? It was
Think.
never
Right.
about you. It's like, actually, we need your help because Black lives are being disproportionately affected by this situation.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was just like encouraged at him coming around, but also
I think.
flabbergasted at
I think.
how a very smart, you know, person who's otherwise a really good person can be so blinded in that way by their privilege. And so I'll end it. He asked me a question, and it was like such a genuine question. He said, hey, so Jared, what's different about this situation, this George Floyd situation, versus, you know, the other situations where there's been a number of these instances, you know, Eric Garner, Philando Castillo? I said, you're the difference. You're the difference.
Right.
The fact that
Yeah.
you were able to come around and understand from this, the fact that so many of our white brothers and sisters are
That
out
something
there
is wrong.
and like screaming on our behalf, filming stuff, holding, you know, police accountable and all this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the difference. That is the difference. We're in this amazing moment where we have, you know, well-meaning people standing on the side of justice. And that's why I love pencil, because, you know, I'm a little bit biased, you know, and because I'm on the board of pencil and I've been working with pencil forever, just full disclosure. um, but you know, I was part of the discussions where, you know, we were talking about what our responses should be. And I was just, you know, should you know, and the messaging and all stuff. And so shout out to Michael Mislansky, who's the head of our communications, and he gets it. He got it right away. And, you know, and
Yeah. Shout out to Michael.
it was an easy thing, you know. And, you know, listen, nothing's easy, right? But the we got to the right conclusion. That's where, like, pencil is, to me, it's like so near and dear to my heart, because, you know, you guys, you young people, y'all shaping the world, man. Y'all are the ones that's leading this energy out there. And, that's who Pencil serves. Pencil serves you guys, because in 20
Yeah.
years, 30 years from now, when you're a partner at a law firm and, you're deciding what nonprofits to give to and to pour back into, in this moment, you're going to remember this moment. You're going to remember this moment where Pencil took a stand
Yeah.
and stood on the side of justice and was clear about it.
Yeah. No, definitely, definitely. I'm not sure if for some reason you were frozen. I don't know. Couldn't see you
Can
for
you
a
see me?
second.
Yeah, you were frozen too on my side, but
I
maybe
am.
it's working. Can
All
you?
right, let me
Yeah,
move.
but
Let
can you
me.
hear me? Is the image
I
frozen?
can hear you.
Can you
Yeah,
hear me? Or is everything frozen?
I
Okay,
can see. I can
that's all
see,
right. The
but
people don't
I
need to
can
see
see.
my face.
They
Yeah,
do. No, but
yeah.
like you said, like this is the work right now that's being
Yo,
done is is what it's about, and most importantly, thinking about what's going to happen down the line, about what organizations that you know people that are going to look to give to in order to continue the mission, in order to continue the work. These are the organizations that are making themselves stand out, especially in a time like this where it's so important. And there's something here that I pinned. There's a comment that I pinned that I feel like is really,
mhm. That's my brother.
The
You pinned it.
theme.
I see it.
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
my
Because I
brother.
feel like
Yeah, man. That's
what
my
he
brother's
said is
show. Shout out to show.
shout 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 out to show, shout out to show. But what he said is super important,
Yeah,
right? And I think that for me, it's not only the theme of this live for me, but I feel like it's the theme of the solution as far as working in our community, right? To build more germs, right? Like to build, more thinkers that can see themselves in places where they might have never imagined. And just to highlight the comment, it says, if you can see the invisible, you can do the impossible.
yeah,
And
yeah.
while that might seem something that, you know, it seems very grand to say, I think it's doable, right? It's our job, to reach out and build a vision that
Yeah,
seems impossible.
that's
Because if
right.
your vision is impossible, imagine where you'll land, right?
That's faith. That's
And
it.
just thinking of it,
That's it.
thinking of it like that. If we want to think of a solution, what we really need to do, it's educating, right? And this is to my white friends now, right? It's educating yourselves, of course, about American history, not just Black history, American history.
Yeah,
Educating yourselves is number one. Number two is assessing your own privilege and
yeah,
how exactly you're letting this system even exist. Number
yep,
two. Number three, it's lending a hand, right? Just making yourself vulnerable to seeing, what exactly, um, you know, what exactly you can do to move the ball forward. So be a mentor, right? Be a mentor. Donate to programs and organizations such as Pencil. Give tours, right, of your company. Give tours of your law firm. Just give the exposure, right? And that's what's going to again give that quote by show, right? He really set the tone, right? That's what's going to give that power, right? By
yeah,
educating yourselves, assessing your privilege and making yourself vulnerable to seeing what it is that you can do to help out. Get
yeah.
uncomfortable. Get
That's right.
uncomfortable.
That's right.
Get
So look,
uncomfortable
by
because
the way, and that's exactly right. I mean, I think it's important that you know, people understand that the discomfort you feel that you may feel when you hear us talk is exactly the growing pains that's going to be necessary in order for us to get to where we got to get. I know IG is about to cut us off,
yeah,
so
right,
I
right.
don't think there's any other way, any better way to end it than what you just said. To everybody that's on this live and everybody that's going to see it. So, thank you for spending this time with me,
No,
man.
thank you,
Thank you to
thank
Pencil.
you.
Give Pencil a follow.
Of
And
course,
I'm sure we'll be texting, and
you
I'll
will.
hit you up when you're ready to study for the LSAT. I got you.
Thank you so much for your, like, just thank you, right?
Yeah.
For everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for telling your story. Thank you for, you know, inspiring somebody like me to then help me inspire others. Thank you, to everybody that tuned in with us. You know, thank you